So I'm going to start with a little bit of a qualifier. When I was asked to speak on this panel, I did tell Sarah that I felt slightly fraudulent accepting because, I'm not an expert in publishing training. I've been in publishing for quite a long time, and I've hired people, and, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my own publishing training or lack thereof. But I just want to say this is a kind of, I've called it a publisher perspective, but it's really a personal perspective, but I have run it past an HR colleague in Wiley, so I don't think I'm going to stray too far off what I'm meant to be saying. But anyway. If I can make it move here. Okay. So I am going to start off with a little bit of kind of personal history, really, which I want to do partly to put my career in perspective for you a little bit, but also, as I say, to demonstrate where and when and how and why training has come into that and what that has meant for me. And as a clue, the bits in red are not very good, and the bits in black and bold are the trainings that I have found personally particularly useful, and I'll talk a little bit more about those. So I started off as a journals marketing coordinator for Basil Blackwell, as it was then, back a long time ago. Apologies to anybody who was at the mentor breakfast this morning. I'm going to slightly repeat my anecdote about, I literally had no training at all for this job. I knew nothing. When I interviewed, they said to me, have you ever done any copywriting? And I said, well, I keep a diary. I was green beyond belief. So I arrived, and the woman who'd been doing the job before me had left a couple of months beforehand and left a stack of paper, because it was back in the day. We didn't have computers, we had typewriters, and we had, I can't remember, carbon copies. I was grappling with what you even called them. And snail mail was the way we did things. So I had inherited this big pile of papers, and I worked my way through those papers, and that was kind of my training. By the time I got to the bottom, I sort of knew what I was doing. And the example I gave this morning at the Mentors Breakfast was that one of those pieces of papers was I needed to get a leaflet printed for a society that was launching a new journal, and so I called up the printer and said, okay, I need to get a leaflet printed, and they said, okay, how many colours is it? And I went, 1, 2, 3. Slight pause. And what would those colours be? Black, red and white. Longer pause. Have you ever placed a print order before? So I learned from there. I mean, it was kind of, good training, but could it have been better? Yep, it definitely could. And I should point out, and you can probably tell this by my accent, this all happened in the UK. I moved to the US in 2000, so the first little bit of my marketing history, my publishing history is all UK based. So a couple of years later, goodness knows why, actually I do know why, I had a couple of children and wanted to have a different kind of work-life balance. So an ex-colleague and I started our own company, the Oxford Publicity Partnership, which offered marketing services to scholarly and STM publishers. There was nobody else really doing that at the time, and neither was there anybody doing training for specialist publishers. There was Bookhouse training, which in the UK was kind of the equivalent of, AAP training. So it was very tradey, basically. It was all about books, and it was all about trade publishing. There was nothing for scholarly publishers and nothing for journal publishers. So we saw this gap in the market. Bear in mind, I had had no training on the job before, and we thought, we'll offer training, why not? The arrogance of youth, I guess. But anyway, so we went ahead and did it, and actually it was fabulous, because it was really good training for me, because every time we ran a course, we had to kind of swat up and actually figure out what we thought about things. I will say the first training session we ran was, we had 6 people, we rented a room in an Oxford college, it was frightfully nice. We made the big mistake of ordering wine at lunchtime, and in the afternoon 2 of our 6 attendees fell asleep and snored. So there was a good lesson to be learned there, but we offered a variety of courses, some of them more practical like copywriting and direct mail, some of them introductory, and we also did in-house training for most of the big publishers actually, Wiley, Cambridge, Oxford, a whole bunch of them. So kind of weird kind of training, but actually very valuable. I then went back to Blackwell as a journals marketing manager. Again, absolutely no training, but I had learned a bit, so maybe it didn't matter so much, and I was doing a version of a job that I knew pretty well by then. I then moved into a slightly different job as Journal's sales manager. This was back at the time when the big deal was just starting to happen. We didn't have a real sales team. We had one sales rep, I think, and me and my manager, and we were kind of figuring out consortia deals on the fly, trying to work out what was going to work and what wasn't. I didn't have any sales training, but I did get some project management training, and that was one of the trainings that was really valuable for me, and that I would say is training that today would be one of the most valuable, from a publishing perspective, is a really valuable training to have. Then I moved over to the US as Journal's Marketing Circulation Director for Blackwell, and we had various trainings. I actually did some in-house training myself there again, and I received Blackwell Manager training, which is actually really sort of supervisor training. It was how to fill in a performance review, that kind of thing. We did some leadership training, which was actually pretty useful, but the best training I had in that job was creative. Actually, I shouldn't really call it creativity training. We had a creativity workshop, and it was absolutely fabulous. It was run by somebody from MIT, and it was for the entire marketing department, which was about 45 people back then, everybody at all levels, all different aspects of marketing, and this guy just did a really good job of taking us out of our comfort zones, taking us out of our little boxes and making us think differently, and it really, so again, that was a training that I remember very, very well and very positively. We were then acquired by Wiley, and I got this job as Director of Central Marketing Services, which meant looking after all our conferences, all our direct mail, publicity, a bunch of other stuff, most of which I didn't know anything about, but they offered me a job and the alternative was redundancy, so I took it. Again, didn't have any training on the job. I did get some Wiley sort of in-house manager training again, which was, about their sort of processes really. So again, it was back to the kind of, figuring it out as I went along, and I had a bit more experience generally by then, so it kind of worked, but I wouldn't say it was my kind of happiest or best job really. I then moved back into something I was more comfortable with, which was Director of Society Relations for a few years, and the training I received then, which was again fabulous, I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, was leadership training, which was carried out across sort of pretty much all the senior managers in the organisation, really, really helpful, and I've really kept with me. And then late last year I moved into my current role as Director of Communications, and the only sort of training we've had since then is for our new communications team, some disc profiling combined with team building, which again has been really helpful. So really potted history of me and what publishing training has meant for me personally so far. So what about from a Wiley marketing perspective? Well, this is a Word It Up, I think it's called, a word cloud of a couple of marketing adverts from the Wiley job site, our jobs webpage. But I thought I'd just pull together to see what kind of words we're using to describe people that we want to come and work for us in a marketing job, because that's, I think, one way of thinking about what sort of training we want. So obviously marketing comes out very big. Community is a big one, and that's because actually, and this isn't a way, certainly when I came into marketing, I don't think we ever used the word community. We weren't thinking in those terms at all. Now for us, thinking about the people that we want to engage with as communities is really, really important. So that's a big one for us. Society is obviously a big one. Global, again, I don't think we didn't think we were global, but we didn't think in that way. I was based in Oxford, and I liaised with colleagues in the US and would do mailings globally, but we didn't really think of ourselves in that way. Now I think thinking, for most publishers anyway, in my experience, thinking of ourselves as being very international and working with our communities internationally is really, really important. What else is on there? Relations, again, I think this is, I guess implicitly I was always managing some kind of relations, but it was not an explicit part of the role. It was just something that went along. You had a journal that was probably published by a society, so you had to talk to the society. But thinking about relationship management in terms of training was not something that was on anybody's radar. It was just something you kind of figured out as you went along. So just a few examples of how I think, some different kind of words that we're using to describe the sort of qualities that we're looking for in candidates for jobs really has changed over the years. And I guess before I go on to talk a bit more about Wiley more generally in terms of training, I guess, where I'm going with this really is, there are soft skills, there are technical skills, there are management skills I put down here, and I think it's to what Corey mentioned, it's not anymore about what we do, it's about why we're doing it and how we're doing it, and that, I think, has led to this shift in language. So we're no longer just thinking, okay, I am going to mail a flyer, I am going to write a press release, check that box. We're thinking, I want to communicate with this audience about this product or this service or this message, whatever it might be. What's the best way of doing that? Is it going to be via email, or is it in person, or is it at a conference? What's going to be the right message for this audience? So it's just all got a lot smarter, a lot more personal, a lot more customised, and it's partly because we have the tools to do that. And going digital has been a wonderful thing from that point of view. It's given us an awful lot more tools, a lot more opportunities to connect, I think, in a lot more meaningful way. And so, and people expect that. So it's kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. So in my book, the soft skills really, in many ways, I think is absolutely critical. This is what I think will. When I'm making hiring decisions anyway, it's very often the soft skills that I'm looking for, because you can train somebody in the technical skills, but you can't teach somebody how to get on with somebody or how to manage a relationship successfully or that kind of thing. I guess maybe writing is a bit of an exception, because if somebody doesn't know how to string a sentence together, you're probably not going to be able to teach them that, and you don't want to have to teach them that. But actually, if somebody can't use Excel, it's a pain. You expect people to be able to use Excel now, but actually if they're a really good candidate, you would find a way of getting up to speed on that, whatever. So from a Wiley point of view, the two big products that we use are actually, commercial break, Wiley products. Both the Disk is an Inkscape product, and that's a company we acquired quite recently. So we've all been, part of the reason we acquired them was we'd started to use that product in-house, and people really liked it, so we bought the company, why not, right? The Leadership Practice Inventory is part of the Leadership Challenge programme, and again, that's been published by Wiley for, I think, 30 years, something like that. So the DISC programme is basically a sort of personality profiling type thing that really teaches you not just what your profile is, but also how that interacts with other people. And as I said, we've done this recently for our communications team, which is a completely new team. Most of us haven't worked together before, and it's really, really helpful to see how we're all going to interact together. What's really interesting to me is in our team of 15 people or something like that, we are all, without exception, I think with one exception, we're all either influencers or steadiness people or something in between. There's one conscientious person, and there are a couple of people who have little bits of dominance in them, but we're all basically nice, touchy-feely, creative types, which is actually a real joy to work with. Arguably we might want to pad it out with people from slightly different backgrounds at some time, because it's really good to not have everybody being the same personality type, I guess, but it's quite nice as well. The LPI programme is something, as I mentioned, I think the top, like 200 or 300 of us senior managers in the company have been through. And I think what's really useful with this sort of tool is not just the kind of skills it gives you, but going back to it again, I think I've said it, you said it, Corey, the language that we use actually to talk to and about how we work is really important. So it's really given us a sort of common language, which has been great. Management skills, I think, have been really very basic. I personally have never had any what I would consider proper management training. Wiley does do management training mainly for new managers. It's mostly around the sort of, process stuff. And it's perfectly fine, it's good, but it's not what I would consider real management training. And then, as I say, there are technical skills. And here I think we're doing some quite interesting stuff. So, excuse me. We're just in the process of introducing some custom courses, specifically Pam Wiley. Now, I realise we're a big organisation for 4,500 colleagues globally, so we have opportunities that small organisations don't. But the great thing about this, so we're introducing a couple to start with, one on social marketing and one on digital analytics. They're tiered courses, so there's a sort of level 3 is kind of for anybody who's interested in it. It's a couple of hours of online learning with a test at the end of it, and really anybody who's got any kind of interest or experience in, say, social media should be able to complete that course very readily, and it just gives you a very basic level of experience. The next tier up is more complex and requires sort of more time. It's 5 or 6 hours of learning, more complicated tests at the end, but still doable by anybody. And then the top tier, and both of those are sort of customised, but not in a very wily way. The top tier is a real commitment, is very custom to Wiley, and is going to be like a real kind of in-house qualification. And the great thing about this is it means, irrespective of what job you're working in, if you need to be using social media in your position, you can apply for any job in Wiley, and depending on which of these layers you've completed, it's really clear what level of knowledge you've got of social media. So it's a kind of an accreditation, I suppose. It's a way of us being able to evaluate globally where people are, and we can also track who's done what levels, and where the gaps are, and if social media becomes something that, for example, editorial want to get involved in, then you can develop a program for them around it. So very cool, I think. We also do a fair bit of industry training, and then of course on-the-job training as well. And then bringing it out to sort of the really big picture from an industry perspective. So I wanted to talk a little bit about publishing and related courses, and I think Corey again touched on this. We talked a bit, and we had lunch on Wednesday and put the world to rights. So I have to say I have I was going to say I have mixed feelings. As far as undergraduate publishing courses do, personally, I don't see that they're hugely valuable. I think it's much more important to have somebody who has learned to think critically and creatively, and who knows how to write and has all those kind of basic skills, irrespective of the subject area. And in fact, I would say in some ways it's almost a disadvantage from my perspective to have somebody come in from a publishing, certainly undergraduate degree point of view, because they'll come in having learned the what, not the why, and because they've learned the what, they'll typically think they kind of know what they're doing, and they don't, because they don't have the big picture. So it's kind of put it this way, I wouldn't actually recommend to anybody who really wanted a publishing career to go and do a publishing degree. Graduate, I think, is a little different, although again, I think, sometimes there is still a bit of a tendency to focus on the what. And one of the things that we were talking about when we had lunch was, actually what you want is people who understand the context. You want people who kind of get the big picture, are interested in the big issues of the times. You don't want somebody who's just thinking, how do I publish a book? That's part of it, but what you want is people who are really thinking bigger picture. I think there's some really good professional training courses for publishers. SSP do some great ones, of course. ALPS do, PSP do, and I think if any of you haven't taken advantage of those, I really strongly recommend. They're actually really good as well for covering some of those bigger picture sort of topics. So they tend to be, a lot of them are more contextual, and they will bring you up to speed on something like open access or copyright in a sort of broader context. So recommend those, and those obviously sometimes can be e-learning on a sort of more continuous basis, or in person, or seminars, webinars, all that sort of thing. There's some really great courses out there. And then I think conferences like this actually are a fabulous opportunity, and we've really taken advantage. I'm based in the Boston office, and with many thanks to SSP, we had everybody had a nice discount if you wanted to send 10 or more people from the same company to here. And since we're locally based, we've taken advantage of that. I can see a number of my colleagues in the audience. I think there's about 30 of us here, something like that. And what's fabulous is that you often with industry conferences, it's the senior people who get to go, and we're the people who need it least, actually. It's great. We can go and network with each other. It's really fun. We have a great time. But in terms of learning and professional development, we don't need it as much as our sort of younger, less experienced colleagues do. So I really, for those of you who have the opportunity to bring younger, sort of early career colleagues with you to these sorts of conferences, I really urge you to do it, because I think it's one of the, for my money, it's one of the best ways. This is what my team are doing this in place of training this year, because they'll get more out of it. So plug over. Okay, and then I just wanted to finish with a few sort of final questions or thoughts, really, which I think tie into what Corey says, and I think will tie in somewhat with what Maria's going to say as well. So really, how can we collaborate? And Corey said, I think, summed up by saying, we we shouldn't be fighting with each other, we should be collaborating. And absolutely, and training is one area where I think there's a huge opportunity to do this. And a few sort of just random thoughts really, and I know the first one, the accreditation certification thing, has floated around in various organisations that I've been part of for a while. I don't know whether we do need it, but I think it's a question that we should keep thinking about, because maybe in the same way that for Wiley we're using it as an in-house thing, maybe it would be helpful to have some kind of portable accreditation that, if you're working for publisher A over here and you apply for a job at publisher B, publisher B knows that you've done this training and therefore you are qualified at this level. I would love to see us as publishers do more to support librarian publishers. I think maybe some publishers are a little anxious about the idea of librarians taking on publishing responsibilities, but as far as I can see, there isn't really any competition there. What libraries are doing is offering a very different kind of publishing service from what commercial publishers or even university presses are doing. So, are there ways that we can collaborate to bring some of the kind of rigour and experience that we have in commercial and sort of more traditional publishing to the library publishing world. And then, and I think this is again a really critical thing, and going back again I think to what Corey said, we're here to serve the research community, aren't we? And it may be one of the ways we can be doing that better would be by providing scholars with more training opportunities. And I know that individual companies do this, Wiley certainly does, Elsevier, Springer, I think lots of us do it kind of individually, but maybe there should be some way of either joining that up better or collaborating more on it. So things that are important to the quality of the process, like writing well for publication, peer review, publishing ethics, those sorts of areas. I think there's an awful lot of scholars out there, and very, very many of them are not trained in these things, and it would be great if we could help improve that. So that's it. Thank you.